Welcome to First. I'm Shirley Min along with Mark Eichman and Nichelle Polston. Getting out from behind bars isn't as simple as just being released from jail. A report this week on ways to deal with the next step.
Building life skills for people with disabilities is the goal of the program Community Interactions.
And the goal of Delaware Hospice is compassion. As an older population grows, the challenges of care grow as well. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
Recidivism rates in Delaware show 76% of ex-offenders are rearrested 3 years after they get out. A reentry simulation at Delaware State University gave state lawmakers, police officers, and members of the criminal justice community a chance to see for themselves why that number is so high. We walk you through the eye-opening simulation in this week's First Look.
Your 15 hits, first week begins now.
Elected leaders, police officers, even this reporter took on new identities to walk a mile in a newly released prisoner's shoes. During the hour-long simulation, we were required to do things like get a photo ID, check in with your probation officer, and get a job. Sounds easy, but it wasn't.
I need a bus ticket.
When you don't have a car or any money because you can't get a job without an ID, the frustration was overwhelming. State Representative Pete Schwarzkopf made it to week 3 before getting tossed in jail, along with 2/3 of the group taking part in the simulation.
When you're going to let somebody back out, you've got to give them the tools to help them to succeed. And we as a state can do that. Make sure they have the ID. That's the biggest thing coming out. Right off the bat, you're tripped right off the bat. So how do you compete in a 100-yard dash when you trip over the first obstacle?
Brady Muhammad says the simulation got it right. He shared with the group how after serving 13 years for robbery, he was lost when he got out, figuratively and literally.
For me, the amount of time that I spent in prison, a lot of things had changed in Wilmington. So I wasn't quite sure where this was at, where that's at, what bus to get on. So I really had to start over.
Project New Start helped Muhammad find his way. The intense 10-week job readiness program in Claymont helps people transition out of prison.
They taught me how to conduct myself in an interview, how to use a computer, which I had no computer skills. So that in itself was very helpful. When it was time for me to get my license, they helped with paying the monies that I need to get my license.
They're coming out with either no education, limited skills, no work history, a criminal record, lack of support, and lack of documents to help them go to work. And also, they have addictions, they may have learning disabilities, they don't have access to transportation. So all of those are significant barriers.
Barriers that Turgan says have contributed to Delaware's alarming recidivism rate. Statistics show of the roughly 1,000 prisoners released each year in Delaware, about 600 are likely to go back to jail. Project New Start partners with various employers and in its 4 years has had 80 students. Of those, 52 graduated, 49 are working, and only 10 have gone back to jail.
So at the cost of $36,000 a year to keep somebody in prison, even a small program like ours, the impact is for 4 years, saving the state of Delaware approximately $1.5 million a year.
Muhammad, who now works with the city of Wilmington, is among Turgan's success stories, as is Sebastian Corbin. The 50-year-old was in and out of prison 3 times for assault and armed robbery. He was trapped on the merry-go-round.
If you can't get employment, you can't be picked up, you tend to revert back to what it is that you know how to do to get money fast, so you'll be able to survive.
But this time, it's different. Corbin, who now works for Owen Steel in the city, says he's older and more mature. Project New Start also helped change the way he thinks. Turgan says Project New Start is the only reentry program in the state that makes the Alternatives to Violence program, or AVP, part of the curriculum. She says her students love it.
It's just different ways to handle problems, to handle trauma, to handle your anger, to handle conflict.
Research has shown AVP participants recidivate less compared to other inmates after release. And to build on that, Turgan added mindfulness and meditation training to drive it all home.
And the hope is that you just stop the cycle. And we have to try and stop the cycle one person at a time. It's just that simple.
There are 6 students in the home stretch of Turgan's current program. Malik Harper and David Williams are among them. Both in their 20s, they have a lot of life they want to live.
I'm so glad that I signed up. It's been the most beneficial program probably I've taken in my life. They let you know it's not going to be a cakewalk, and they have great partners who are willing to give us a second chance, when we get back out there.
I'm going to do what I have to do to be successful and stay on the right path. So wherever objects that come through my way, I'm going to conquer them and stay focused on the bigger picture in life.
Ending the cycle and hopefully starting a positive ripple effect within their families and their communities. The Delaware House Democratic Caucus co-hosted the reentry simulation with the U.S. Attorney's Office and Delaware State University. Joining me now is Sam Lukoff, a public defender in Delaware who also worked as a prosecutor in the AG's office. Sam, good to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
When I went through the simulation, I got totally overwhelmed and I quit in the first week.
So hard.
Why? This is not an option in real life.
No.
So then why does it seem like the system for reentry is set up for ex-offenders to fail? Because I know that's not the intention.
No. Obviously, we would think that the intention would be for everyone to be successful. But I think that people who sort of set up the system didn't take into consideration how difficult it is for people without means, people without education, people without job experience, who commit crimes when they're young, are imprisoned for a long period of time, or even for a short period of time, for goodness sakes, but long enough so that they're, again, out of the community, not getting educated, not working on job skills, and then they have to come back into the community, and to say it's a challenge is an understatement.
So they're assuming they have more support, more resources than they actually have.
Exactly. And usually, and as a public defender, we get to know our clients pretty well and the communities that they come from. And these are communities with less resources than other communities, and again, less jobs. The schools aren't great. There's often violence in these communities, so it absolutely sets it up to be very, very difficult for our clients to get back in.
Given your experience as a prosecutor, can you see it from the other side of it? Like the inconvenience, the difficulty of it is a consequence of having made bad choices?
Absolutely. So I was a prosecutor for the first 4 years of my career, mainly in juvenile justice, but also with adults. I was the DUI prosecutor for a while. And I absolutely understand the issue of public safety, and that we need communities to be safe and people to feel safe, and to have our victims feel like they have been compensated in some way. But in reality, communities are safer when people who come back into the communities, again, these reentering citizens, when they have jobs, when they're able to be productive members, pay taxes, and they're not then going to want to or need to commit crime in order to sustain themselves or their families.
Priscilla Turgan, the CEO of Project New Start for My Story, says that she has a tough time raising funds because the organization is not helping victims, they're helping perpetrators. Why should we help the ex-offenders? I mean, you kind of touched on it just now.
So honestly, it's almost like a selfish thing, and I work with Priscilla closely and love her to death. But she's right. It has been difficult to raise funds because people don't understand that it's actually beneficial to all of us in the community. Not only when we get returning citizens back into the job force, they're going to be not committing crimes, they're going to be paying taxes, which is great for obviously our tax base, our schools, etc. But we then don't have to pay taxes for them. When someone is sent to prison, our tax dollars pay for that. So when we have a returning citizen who's able to get a job, and again, not only are they paying into the taxes, but we are also not committing our taxes to pay for them to be in prison. So selfishly, it's a good thing to support these kinds of programs.
Okay, now Project New Start, the organization, it receives state money, grants, individual donations, and you can help at project-new-start.org. Sam Lukoff, an attorney in Delaware's Office of Defense Services, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Finding daily activities that build life skills as well as provide recreation for adults living with intellectual disabilities can be challenging. But as one Newcastle family learned, developing partnerships like the one they have with Community Interactions, a support service organization, is proof it can be done.
Randy Johnson is like a lot of his peers. At 28, he's fun-loving, energetic, and helpful.
I have to pitch in every day. I do that.
You gotta
every
pitch
day.
in? I just raised him as a normal kid. And then gradually, you know, the reality of him having Down set in.
Johnson was born with Down syndrome, but his parents, Susan Johnson and Randy Sr., weren't told of his diagnosis until several months after his birth.
The pediatrician that we had didn't say anything to us. A nurse showed up at the door, knocked on the door, and she, you know, I thought she was just coming to visit. And so I had her come in, and she's explaining to me about Down syndrome, and I'm looking at her, and I just, you know, and she realized I had no idea what she was talking about.
What she did understand were all the things she was told her son wasn't going to be able to do.
All the things she told me that he probably wouldn't do, he did. The only thing that he probably had the biggest delay for me was his speech. Mm-hmm. He didn't talk until he was 4.
And now you can't get him to
be quiet.
A balanced education for their son was important to the Johnsons, so they enrolled him in special education courses as well as inclusion classes.
Having a child such as Randy, you're concerned about whether they're going to get picked on, especially going into junior high school. How is he going to be treated, you know. So one day Randy misses the bus and I take him into the high school. It's my chance to see, walking through the hall, and it just so happened that they were changing classes, and walking to his class to see, you know, just how the kids were going to treat him. He's got so many high fives. Hey, Randy, how you doing? You know, it was a relief to my heart that God has surrounded this guy with good people.
Johnson graduated from high school at 18, but remained in the adult program until he was 21.
So the next transition was kind of, I felt like I was in the dark because I really didn't know anything about that transition.
While navigating their son's K-12 education wasn't without some setbacks, this next chapter was even more challenging.
In high school, they tried him with different jobs, you know, different things, and he wasn't ready.
But finding a program that would work with their son's personality led to several disappointments. That was before they found one just right for them.
We thought that we could support him. We brought him in, he did his tour. We did about a 2-week, I'm gonna say about a 2-week intern process where he was, you know, we came for 2 weeks. We got to learn him, he got to learn us. At the end of that 2 weeks, we had a call for the family meeting. Well, at that time, his mother was concerned and she thought that we were putting him out of the program because he was struggling a little bit in the first 2 weeks. But, you know, we reassured her that's not what the meeting was for. It was just more about trying to see what we could do to make Randy's days better.
At Community Interactions, a nonprofit that supports people with autism, intellectual disabilities, and diagnosed behavioral health challenges, Johnson found acceptance.
This atmosphere allows him to be who his personality is, and it works.
The program provides daily activities such as exercise and volunteer opportunities like Meals on Wheels.
Delivering the Meals on Wheels. They gave him the opportunity to step out there and take the lead, and that's just what we were looking for. Independent living skills, where he's helpful, he's caring, and it lets you see what he's capable of doing. And it's been a really good working relationship.
In addition to the day program, Community Interactions, which is located in Pennsylvania and Delaware, offers a variety of programs including residential and life-sharing programs. That's where non-relatives with disabilities live with each other in a caring home environment.
Coming up on First, Delaware Hospice adapts to a growing aging population. And up next, First Experience looks at a restoration project that captures the original spirit of the work of John Sloan.
The Delaware Art Museum has a new exhibit of famed painter John Sloan's work. It's the first major exhibition of his work since 1988. Many of the paintings in the exhibition are over 100 years old and needed a little bit of TLC before going on display. First Experience went behind the scenes to see these beautiful works being restored.
This fall, we have the first retrospective of John Sloan's full career. The pieces in this show are, probably on average about 100 years old. So some of them are definitely due for some cleaning. And some of the works in this show haven't been shown in a really long time. Some not since the 1980s, some not since the artist's lifetime, actually. And they need cleaning and care.
One issue with the Sloan paintings is that since they're 20th century paintings, there was a period where he was experimenting with different materials, as a lot of painters from the early 20th century were. We don't want to damage any original paint, but we want to reveal as much original paint through cleaning carefully as we can, because we want to represent the artist and make it look as close as it can to when it came off that artist's easel. You can find out a lot just by looking something under the microscope or in ultraviolet light, where a lot of repainted damages will show up. Looking at things under the microscope is very satisfying to me, because you can see the artist's technique and how they constructed it layer by layer, and sometimes the way they did it looks different than you would expect. Sometimes you'll see a struggle where the artist had to repaint something several times before the final image was arrived at.
I've learned a lot just looking at them with the conservator. I learned a lot about technique, about how things are made, how the artist is working. The conservation process has helped me to develop a new respect for some of his later work and a much better understanding of how he made those works.
When the painting is done, you have something that represents that artist as close as it can be. You're always going to have painting that's a little bit yellower, it's cracked. So you can't make it look like it did, say, if it came off the easel in 1800. You're not going to have that exact appearance.
It is so exciting to see a work that has been, particularly when it's like dingy, grimy, and in the case of John Sloan's paintings in Gloucester, he's working in this high-keyed palette. He's influenced by, Van Gogh. They're incredibly bright pieces. And to see them when they're clean, it can just be a revelation.
One good thing is that everything we do, what modern conservators do, is reversible, so it can be taken off easily without damage to the paint. And the materials we use shouldn't yellow or become or crack or have a problem. So hopefully the restorations will last a long, long time. I don't want people to walk the museum thinking, oh, that's Mark's work. I don't want anyone to say the upper left corner of that painting, you did a great job restoring it. I'd rather have them think that nothing was ever done to that upper left corner, because if you can see the restoration, then I'm not doing my job properly.
It can take 15 to 40 hours to restore each painting. You can see the full exhibit on display now at the Delaware Art Museum, and First Experience will bring the exhibit to you in the coming weeks. You can get more information about the exhibit at delart.org.
United Way of Delaware recently joined state and education officials to launch a campaign to improve students' reading rates by the 3rd grade. It's called the Delaware Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Here to give us a better understanding of the campaign is Michelle Taylor, President and CEO of the United Way. She's our first person this week. Welcome.
Thank you.
So first, let's talk about in Delaware, 52% of students read on grade level by the end of 3rd grade.
That's right.
But that's not the case for low-income students in about 17 zip codes across the state. Can you tell us what are some of the reasons? Because I understand it's about 37% for low-income students.
Right. Well, usually what happens is zip codes matter, right? So where kids live, right? So where they're born in truly determines, right, their outcomes. If we don't equalize or provide equity around resources. And I think that's really the big difference. So kids that are born like maybe my kids or your kids that have resources, kids, books in their home, parents reading to them, access to things, actually just get better outcomes. And so what we're trying to work on as a community is how do we ensure, right, that there's equal access and opportunities across the state.
Why the third grade? How critical is third grade literacy for a student?
Actually, the research shows that where kids are by the end of third grade is really the best predictor of where kids will end up at high school graduation and ultimately for their success. I'm not sure if you know, but up to third grade, kids learn to read and then they read to learn. And so that third grade, end of third grade mark is extremely critical to kids' success.
So tell me about this coalition. Who will lead the coalition or hold those involved accountable?
So it's interesting you say that. So we've been pleased to partner with just an array of community partners to date to build the Delaware campaign. But the leaders, right, those that's guiding it right now have been working with the governor's office, the Board of Education, Department of Education. But, you know, while I would consider us more of the convener, the collaborators, right? Because this is a plan for Delaware. And so there's so many other partners in this. This isn't one of those things that's exclusive, right?
I'm glad you brought that up, that it takes pretty much a village for everyone, schools, nonprofits. According to Susan Bunting, Secretary of Education, she mentioned that there's a 30 million word gap.
That's right.
Between students who are well-to-do and disadvantaged students. So we know that it will take a lot of people to be involved. I understand there is there are a few focus areas.
Right.
One, reducing summer learning loss.
That's right.
What does that mean? How can you guys help with that?
Well, what happens in the summer that a lot of people don't know, right? Kids that come from middle income families and above, their kids usually gain like, 1 to 2 months of learning because they're in academic enrichment summer camps, they're taking vacations, they may be going to museums, right? The parents are still working with them versus kids that come from disadvantaged communities, they usually lose, right? 1 to 2, maybe 3 months of learning. And so then look at the gap that happens in that, right? Because they don't have access to the same resources. And so one of the programs or one of the core focuses is how do we ensure that kids that come from high need communities are also engaged in enrichment programs throughout the summer. And how do we make sure that's consistent up and down the state, which we also have to make sure not just access, but affordability. And then how do we make sure the programs actually incorporate that literacy component?
Okay, and I guess that's where you come along, United Way of Delaware. You guys are working or have been working on literacy for some time. You have the Reading Angels and then my very own library program. How can people pretty much get involved?
People can always sign up on our website to be a participate in those through www.uwde.org. And as far as the campaign, people should look out. We're still on the early edge, early phases of this, but we'll definitely be sending out communication pieces where the community itself can get involved and engaged.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Michelle Taylor, President and CEO of the United Way of Delaware. Anyone interested to help can call the United Way directly or go online for more information, and that's uwde.org.
For 35 years, Delaware Hospice has been helping patients and families face the end of life. As Delaware's population continues to skew older, the nonprofit has expansion plans to serve an aging population that continues to grow. Set in a quiet corner of southern Delaware, the Delaware Hospice Center in Milford has served more than 5,000 patients. The center was built 10 years ago to provide inpatient hospice care and to teach family members how to provide care for their ailing loved ones.
Here at the Delaware Hospice Center, the goal is to make people feel at home in very comfortable surroundings and to make family as well, visiting them, feel at home as we attend to our patients' needs.
Most of Delaware hospice patients are served in their own homes, but some are cared for at the Milford Center.
Patients come here from a multitude of different areas, out of state, local hospitals, nursing homes, or even from our own home care patient census. Our job is to manage symptoms, send them back to their home care setting. I have this saying here, and it's either our social worker works on the moment they walk in, sending them home physically or heavenly.
While the Milford Center offers complete nursing care, it's designed not to look like a typical care facility, with medical equipment hidden in cabinets, carpeted floors, and even a kitchen for families to cook meals in.
We have elderly spouses caring for elderly patients, and they're able to stay here in the room with them. And again, with our family kitchen, our shower area, they're able to continue on with their lifestyle, as well as learn and be educated about how to keep their loved one comfortable at home.
Keeping loved ones comfortable is the mission of hospice, whether at the Milford Center or in their own home.
My mother moved in with me in 2014, and she had Parkinson's disease for 25 years, so she just came to a point where we had to keep an eye on her a lot more. So we decided to move her into my home.
Steve Swearsey eventually got in-home help caring for his mother from Delaware Hospice.
It was amazing. It was like getting help like troops coming in after a hurricane. That's what it felt like to me, because now all of a sudden I had these people coming in to help me make the decisions I was making on my own and not sure if they were right or wrong.
Through their transitions program, Delaware hospice workers help patients and families deal with other needs beyond the physical illness.
So it can be a variety of things. I've helped individuals pay their electric bill. That's because their medical costs have gotten so high that they can't afford to keep the electric on. Or figure out a way, how can I still get my medications and live at home and take care of myself.
Getting those medications at home was critical for Steve Swearsey caring for his mother.
When you see somebody in pain, to be able to treat it right away is so important. And to have somebody to call and get your answer right away instead of trying to think, you know, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to get her to a hospital? Should I call an ambulance? To have people there right away to tell you this is the best thing to do for your mother is so important, because it's very stressful.
Delaware Hospice President and CEO Susan Lloyd anticipates a growing demand for services as Delaware's population ages.
We definitely see more need. I mean, the baby boomer population continues to grow, but we also know that we have the influx of a lot of new people to our community. Particularly here in Sussex County, so we expect the demand for our kinds of services will continue to increase.
There's also plans to add a similar facility near Newark.
Newcastle County actually is the second location for the hospice center. We have been out raising money for that project for some time, so that we are very hopeful that in the next few years we'll be able to break ground and have another location just like this available to Newcastle County.
Delaware Hospice has raised about $7 million of the $10 million needed to fund the new hospice center in Newark. And the care they provide is not just for patients, but for the whole family dealing with end of life. And while hospice care is covered by Medicare, other services they offer are covered by donations and fundraising, meaning no one gets a bill from Delaware Hospice. That also helps the family dealing with a really tough situation.
Next week on First, we dive into all things chocolate and present the concept of lyrical math. 2 + 2 will never sound the same.
That is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Nichelle Polston and Mark Eichman, I'm Shirley Min. Have a great week.